You know, I'm surprised that after 2 months of making videos, I haven't yet done a London walk. But I guess that's because when spring and summer arrives, I like to get out of London as much as possible. We are doing one today though, for a special reason too, and we're starting at one of my favourite places in London, Richmond. It's been about a year since I was last at Richmond, and I think that lettering at the top of the station was not there last time. Richmond is under the Heathrow flight path, so there is just an influx of planes going overhead. And I'm by this bus stop here for special event services towards Twickenham Stadium. But how are you meant to get on one of them buses then? I am by another bus stop now though, which is in use. Pools on the Park, the terminus of the 490. That's a very fun sounding bus stop name. And this does indeed actually run to Heathrow Airport, terminals 4 and 5. Every time I try to film, they've closed this outdoor gym here, which I was going to point out because I could tell from satellite images that there was an old 2012 Olympics logo on the floor, but they've ripped it up. There's still one on the basketball hoop. You can see gyms like this kind of scattered around London. So I'm not heading for some of the more infamous locations of Richmond, like Richmond Park or down by the riverside. I've done that a few times before. It would be good to do again one day, but I've instead come into Old Deer Park where I've never been. And there's another plane about to go overhead. I am heading for the river though, but not before I come and have a look at this, which doesn't have any sort of plaque or anything to tell you what it's all about. I thought I'd seen this before from the Thames path, but I've just realised that there's another one way over there, and I think that's the one which I've actually seen. So this must be the one that I've seen from the Thames path before. Surprisingly though, there's also a second one, but there's still no information on them to tell me what they're here for. Oh, there's another plane going over. Of course there is. And here it is in all its glory, the magnificent River Thames. And that is the bridge we're crossing. So this is Richmond Lock and Weir footbridge, and it is part of the Capital Ring, a 78-mile circular walk around London. And when I did this section, the footbridge was actually closed, so I never got to go up and walk across. What I had to do therefore was walk back up along the Thames to Twickenham Bridge over there, cross that instead, and then come up on the path on the opposite side. It's a very unusual footbridge, definitely one of the strangest ones across the Thames in London, but you do get a good view of the river from on top. It's quite scary when you look down though into that water. I was going to reenact what I did on that Capital Ring walk, and that was sit down on these steps here and take a break, but it's become very overgrown since I was last here. Yeah, I'm alright, I'm not going to do that. It's too early on the walk anyways for a break. I've only done a short stint along the River Thames to the point where the River Crane makes its confluence with it. But we're not about to start walking this river either. Found an information board here for a walk you can do along the River Crane, but it's very old. There's no 90 bus that goes to Richmond nowadays. R62? That doesn't exist. On this bridge over the River Crane, there's a plaque which mentions the County Council of Middlesex. That hasn't existed for a very long time. I've also just noticed this drain cover here that says Heston and Isleworth Urban District Council. That would have been an old borough that would have been part of the County of Middlesex. As you walk around London, you'll find hundreds of old signs that bear old borough names. There's at least 30 different examples of different names you can find. The London we know today that was formed in 1965 that swallowed up a lot of Middlesex, I just find it so surprising that after all this time there's still so many signs left that bear the old name. Cutting across Redleys Park here, which also has a leisure centre and an outdoor gym, but this one with no 2012 logo either. Seriously playing? It's just all day, isn't it? Site of an old stables here has now been turned into an art studio. I like the clock tower. I didn't realise today that I would be passing by Isleworth's War Memorial. I remember when I was on a school trip when I was like 10 in year 5, going to Hampton Court Palace, and at some point along the coach journey I looked outside the window and saw a bus stop for Isleworth War Memorial. Later on, when I got around to travelling on all of London's bus routes, I've done that by the way if you didn't know, I finally realised, oh, I can now see what bus stops at Isleworth War Memorial because I didn't remember the number, and here I am now on foot. It's not just the River Crane that makes its confluence with the River Thames in these parts, but the Duke of Northumberland River as well, that I'm passing over right now, just before I head into St John's Gardens opposite. I thought this path that I'm taking, now that I've left St John's Gardens, was going to lead me up to my next park, but it doesn't. It brings me to a primary school instead. That's the park I wanted to go in, Primrose Park, but there's no access to it. There's only one entrance and it's far on the other side. Well, silver linings, I got to see the Red Lion pub instead, because I didn't get to go into the park. And that road has brought me up to Isleworth Station. I've never actually used this one before. That means I'll have to come back here one day, won't it? Well, I've made it into my next local park now, Thornbury Park. I like to visit as many parks as possible on my London walks. Because I have the city accessible to me at any time, I might as well explore as much of it as possible. Even if it is just a little park like this that's perhaps not that interesting, it's good to tick another green space off of the list. I've made it up the road from Isleworth now into Hounslow, and I'm by its bus station, which is on the site of an old tube station. There's a history board here that tells the story for me. This was Hounslow Town Station, a terminus at the end of a branch line of the District Railway, but it only survived for 3 years from 1883 to 1886 initially because plans to extend south towards Twickenham never happened. The District Railway therefore decided to extend west instead, coming off of the little spur down to Hounslow Town to new stations called Heston and Hounslow and Hounslow Barracks. Hounslow Town was brought back into use in 1903 and it allowed trains to come in and reverse to go and serve the new Hounslow stations. But even that didn't survive long, and in 1909 it was replaced a couple of minutes up the road by another station with the same name on that branch to the other Hounslow stations. And this is it. In 1925 the names were simplified to just become Hounslow East, Hounslow Central and Hounslow West. This in itself is a relatively new station building that opened back in 2003. And this pathway I'm on here is actually the alignment of that old railway branch to Hounslow Town. Unfortunately, it seems like it's just a place where people dump their beer cans nowadays, but it is about to connect up with what is now the modern day Piccadilly line, which is just up there somewhere. You can walk right up alongside the railway line towards the next station, which is Osterley. Let me use the subway underneath the Great West Road here to get over to it. There we go, that's a better shot of it. It has a very striking brick tower with a roundel on top and a spire on top of that one too. Quite like Osterley Station, just a shame it brings you out onto this road. I've crossed back over the Great West Road because I saw on the map that there was another Thornbury Park, or alternative name I guess, Marbay Gardens, but it's private property. There's a very posh house here as well, so I guess I won't be going in there. What is open to the public though is Jersey Gardens. I've just had to cross the Great West Road again though to get here. I'm back beside the railway line, and is it just me, Or is there old platforms down there? Well, yes, this is the original Osterley station on the branch line, Osterley and Spring Grove. It's been turned into a bookshop now, but there's some dispute over what the original station name was, because this board here, old photos show it saying Osterley Park and Spring Grove. The Piccadilly line extended down this branch in 1933, and the current day Osterley station opened in 1934, replacing the Spring Grove one. District line services continued to use this branch up until 1964. And now that we've mentioned Osterley Park, why not make that our next destination? I'm already in it. So already, this is brilliant. Although we're doing an urban London walk today, we're still out in the countryside. I can't believe there's just a whole field here. It's not what you would expect from, what are we in, Zone 4? They have cows too. I'm already blown away by this place. Now, some of my early London adventures consisted of me picking out random parks in London that I've never been to and getting the bus in between them to go out and explore. I remember specifically there were ones like Mordenhall Park. Actually, I got the tram in between these ones. Wandle Park, Lloyd Park and South Norwood Country Park. I did Kensington Gardens, Holland Park and Chiswick House and Gardens another day. And one which I've always remembered but haven't always remembered, and that will make sense in a moment, is the 1st of January 2018, New Year's Day, I went and explored Syon Park, Hounslow Heath and Osterley Park. Now, Syon Park I've been back to on the Capital Ring and one other time. Hounslow Heath I've been back to on London Loop and several other times. Osterley Park though, I've never come back to, which is weird because it's such a large property. I've been to so many London parks multiple times, but for some reason I've never come back here. And back in the day, I never really took photos or anything, so I kind of have no recollection that I have been to Osterley Park. So 6.5 years later, I finally made it back here, and that is the National Trust property that is Osterley House. Now, if it hadn't been so long since I was last here, I would have recognised this building when I watched the Alex Rider TV show, because it appears in it as the Friend Estate at the Friend Mansion. It's odd because when I watched it, I did genuinely think to myself, I wonder where that building is. If I had a photo of the house when I visited last time, I might have realised where it was. And again, if it hadn't been 6.5 years since I was last here, I would have found out a lot sooner. I seem to keep coming across places they used for filming in Alex Rider. Last year I was in Bristol and came across a building there that I recognised. There's Millennium Mills in London as well, which is just an iconic filming location. That one I recognised straight away though, it's pretty obvious. It's a really impressive building though. I'm a big fan of the architecture. Strangely though, I remember this building over here from when I came before, but not the actual star of the show, Osterley House. The other thing I remember about my visit here before is that I didn't look at the map as to where I was going. I was just wandering around here aimlessly. I did the same thing in Hounslow Heath and discovered some interesting things I'd like to go back and look at again. But here, I thought I would end up looping back around towards Osterley like I'm doing now, but I ended up on some random path that just went up towards Norwood Green, which is near to Southall, and I went up to the bus stop and was like, right, how are you going to help me get home? This is such a beautiful place to come to, Osterley Park. I would recommend if you haven't before. It's National Trust property too. You can pay to go into the house if you'd like. Even I would like to come back. I'll make sure it's not 6.5 years later this time. Actually, no promises. I've left Osterley Park. I'm passing back over the Piccadilly line again. Oh, it's a fox and its cub. This is the terminus of the H28 bus route, which runs from a Tesco to a Tesco. It's the only one to do that, from here at Osterley to Ballsbridge in Hayes. And just next to the Tesco lies the Gillette building here at Gillette Corner. This marks the westernmost point of the Golden Mile, a selection of Art Deco industrial buildings that line the Great West Road. It's another impressive building, isn't it? Seems like it's undergoing some restoration work right now. I have no idea what this building used to be. It's all abandoned right now. They should restore this too. So I was going to turn left along the Golden Mile, along the Great West Road, but I realised that I could come over it to see Syon Lane Station instead, because this is where my adventure began that day, where I went to Syon Park, Hounslow Heath and Osterley Park. It feels fitting to have that Art Deco building list a whole bunch of cities, as there's a plane going over the top of it. But I'm turning off of the Great West Road here, down onto the Grand Union Canal, which is also the River Brent. They kind of merged at this point. And we've rejoined the Capital Ring, 3 miles back to Richmond Bridge. That goes across Syon Park and along the Thames. We've done a lot more than that today, but we are nearing the end of the walk now. And what better way to kickstart the final leg of the adventure than by my favourite canal. This is a pretty epic location. It's kind of a layer of bridges here. You have the M4 on top and then another bridge underneath going over the River Brent. It's a very vast open space and it's really cool. I remember trying to find this before when I did the Capital Ring walk. That was 4 years ago now. I'm glad I've come back. Huh, I've just learned it was the first elevated motorway viaduct in the UK. That's a cool fact. Genuinely surprised I'm saying this, but that might be one of my favourite locations in London underneath that motorway. If you're looking for it yourself, it's here in Boston Manor Park. That name suggesting that there might actually be a manor house. Oh, here it is. It's like I planned it. Boston Manor House. Slightly more modest than Osterley's, but still a really nice property. This extraordinary 400-year-old house is open to visitors. Free entry as well. It's closed now though. I've left it too late. Opposite Boston Manor Park, you have Blondin Park, which I came to last year. It's sort of a random day out just because I knew it was happening. The Brentford Festival, which was taking place here. And an old Routemaster bus as well, and a circular route to kind of pick up people locally from places like Brentford and Handwell. It's quite odd to be back here now when there's no one. This is the last location on my walk today, but before I head to the tube station, I have a bit of a story to tell. One day, randomly in May 2018, I took a walk along the Grand Union Canal from West Drayton to Boston Manor, and whilst there, waiting for my train, I took a selfie with the roundel. At that time, I was actually growing my hair out, and as I was coming up to a year's worth of hair growth, I thought I'd look back to what was the first photo I took after I last got my haircut, and I realised it was the Boston Manor selfie. So it only made sense to head back there and get a comparison photo 1 year later. That was after a bit of a mini adventure where I went to some random tube stations out in West London that I don't use often, like Ravenscourt Park and North Ealing. 2020 then rolled around, and lockdown came in when I was doing my Capital Ring walk. I would have done the section from Wimbledon Park to Boston Manor via Richmond much earlier if lockdown wasn't a thing. It was my first walk after lockdown. So because I was ending up there a year later again, it made sense to take a third photo. And then it just carried on from there. In 2021, actually my last trip where I got buses in between random parks, I did a bit of Wimbledon Common, I then walked a bit of the Duke of Northumberland River, and then I went to some local parks around Ealing, such as Blondin Park. I ended at Boston Manor and took a fourth photo. 2022 was a bit of an outlier because I did a walk along the North Downs Way from Merstham to Box Hill. Now, there's no transport out in Box Hill really, that's in the Oyster Zone, apart from the 465 bus. So I took that heading back towards Kingston. But I realised I needed the Boston Manor photo. It became obsessive at this point, so I swapped over to a 281 and got that into Hounslow, where I then got the Piccadilly line, jumped out at Boston Manor and took the fifth photo. That leaves last year then. Well, I was heading out to Hounslow again to catch a bus, the 116 to Ashford Hospital, where I was beginning a walk towards Staines and then across Staines Moor to Heathrow Terminal 5. Before I headed out to Hounslow though, just like the year before, I jumped out at Boston Manor on the way there, got the photo and jumped back on. And now we've made it to the present day, 2024. All of the previous photos I have taken in between the 14th of May and the 13th of June every year. We've fallen into that bracket here. The station's just up there. Let's go take a seventh selfie at Boston Manor.
And I can't believe after all that time I had never gone to see the actual Boston Manor.
And there's Boston Manor Station. Has another brick tower with a roundel at top, but it's not as tall as Osterley's. This station also had a previous name when it originally opened. It was Boston Road, but then renamed in 1911. And of course the Piccadilly line then came through in 1933 and opened a huge depot here. I've actually never seen it so empty. I guess they're all out because it's rush hour. And because it's rush hour, I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes until 7 o'clock so I pay the off-peak fare home. Down the stairs, turn around, and there is the infamous roundel. Right, let's do this. So thank you for coming along with me on another walk. I will leave you with a closing shot of, well, me. God, that's arrogant, isn't it?
2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. See you next year.
Now, some of my early London adventures consisted